This week in IT, all Linux distributions are affected by a serious security flaw that can completely destroy systems. Google announces that it's going to buy cybersecurity firm Mandiant, swiping it from under Microsoft's nose. Apple unveils its new all-powerful M1 Ultra chip, and there's much more. So this week, researchers revealed a new security vulnerability in the Linux kernel, to be precise. Now, this is pretty much as bad as it gets. I know that we're all used to hearing about Windows vulnerabilities, but this is similar to the dirty cow kernel vulnerability from a few years ago, but this one is even worse. Now, it affects all Linux distributions, and some of them are having patches released for them as we speak, and some not. But when those patches become available, of course, you should patch your systems as soon as possible. So this vulnerability basically allows an attacker to potentially overwrite the root password, of course, in the etc. password directory. And once they've done that, not only are they able to overwrite that, regardless of whether a file has write permission or read permission, they can overwrite a file. How is that even possible? Well, because this vulnerability affects the page cache, so the memory page cache connected to the Linux kernel. So that allows an attacker, for instance, to even overwrite a file, or at least give the impression of an overwritten file, even for immutable files and read-only files on a CD-ROM, for instance. Now, this affects Linux kernel versions from 5.8 and upwards. And now an updated kernel has already been released, and it's been fixed in kernel version 5.16.11, 5.15.25, and 5.10.102. Now, of course, what you really ought to do is wait for the vendor of your distribution to provide a patch, and it should be relatively simple, of course, then to apply that patch. Now, if there's no patch available at the moment for your distribution, then, of course, you can attempt to upgrade the kernel yourself. But unless you are, of course, experienced at doing that and want to do a lot of regression testing, then probably it's better to wait for your vendor to provide the appropriate patches for your distribution. So this news came as a little bit of a surprise. Google have announced plans to buy cybersecurity company Mandiant. Now, we talked about this, I can't remember, was it last week or the week before, and there were rumors circulating that Microsoft was actually preparing to put in an offer for Mandiant. Now, Mandiant is one of the leading cybersecurity companies, and, you know, whenever there's a major breach or cyber attack against some big government agency or something like that, it's usually people from Mandiant that are called in to do all of that forensic work to really find out what happened and what damage has been done. Now, this, of course, is a massive win for Google, and it's really going to put the pressure on Microsoft because, of course, they are positioning the Microsoft cloud as the most secure, and they've been doing tons of work over the last few years, doing things like improving Microsoft Defender, extending it to become a multi-cloud platform, security information and event management in the cloud with Sentinel, of course, and they're really doing great things there. But, you know, nevertheless, Google now have Mandiant, and this is really going to put the pressure on. So Microsoft are really going to be forced here to make sure they keep up pace with all these security features and enhancements that they're making to their services to make their cloud the most secure and, of course, attractive for enterprise customers. While we're on the subject of security here, there has been an announcement this week that some new speculative execution CPU bugs have been announced by researchers. Now, at first glance, these don't look particularly serious. Basically, this time you would need at least low-level privileges on the system in order to exploit these. Now, some workarounds and some mitigations have already been published in a research paper. There is a proof of concept, so you can actually see this work in, but we're going to have to wait for, you know, the Linux distributions and for Windows and all these operating systems, of course, to receive official patches and for Intel and AMD to address this issue with a firmware update. But nevertheless, I don't think that you need to be super worried about this right now. This week, of course, was Patch Tuesday, and I'm not going to go through all of the bugs that were fixed there, but we talked a little bit last week, I think, about this bug with the Windows reset feature. And if you're using OneDrive, the OneDrive client, and synchronizing files from the cloud to your local PC, there was a bug with the reset feature in Windows that meant some of those files that were synchronized by OneDrive were not actually deleted. Now, in this round of updates for Windows 10 and Windows 11, that bug has been fixed. Now, this is a really interesting one, and again, something that I wasn't really expecting to hear this week, but Microsoft has revamped its Founders Hub program. Now, this basically allows startups to get help from Microsoft. So they don't offer, money, or a cash sum to help you get started with your business. But what they help you do is have access to Microsoft's technology. Now, they've revamped this program, and there are two major changes that basically help startups to get on the ladder, really. So the first thing is you don't have to have any cash funding for your startup in advance before you apply for access to this. And the second thing is you can be just at the idea generation stage. So you don't have to have a fully developed product already on the table. And basically this gives you access to varying amounts of credit within Azure depending on what stage in the process of developing your startup you're at. So for instance, if you're just at the idea creation stage, you might get $1,000 a year, and it goes up to $150,000 a year in Azure Credit. And of course, why are Microsoft doing this? Because they want to lock you into their Azure cloud platform. Of course, they don't want you to go straight to AWS, which of course is the trendy option and where most startups are most likely to head. So I think this is a great idea. I don't know how many startups were actually using the Founders Hub before Microsoft announced these changes, but it's very interesting, and if you're in that space, this is well worth a look. You can head over to Microsoft's website and apply for this scheme. Now, another interesting thing that's been reported this week, and we covered this on Petri, Microsoft is planning to add the ability to switch between different accounts in some Microsoft 365 web apps. Now, if you're like me and you work in a couple of different tenants, it can be a real pain to switch between them. So there are various workarounds for that at the moment. Of course, you can open up the web app in a different browser profile and all this kind of thing. And that's what I do to keep all of my different tenants that I work with separated. But, that's an extra step that users have to go through, something that you have to explain to them. And Microsoft is hoping to build in this kind of tenant switching ability into some apps. So this has come into Office.com and Outlook web app and OneDrive for Business, OneDrive Consumer, SharePoint Online, Office on the web, and the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And that's going to launch hopefully next month. So I think that's going to be a welcome thing for many people. So maybe it has limited appeal as a new feature, but I still think there'll be many people that are glad that that's going to happen. So, of course, Apple had its big event yesterday and it announced the Mac Studio, the iPhone SE3, which is an upgrade from the 2020, which I have actually. But the real interesting thing here is the new M1 Ultra chip that is going to go inside that Mac Studio. Now, basically, this is two M1, I think, Max chips basically just linked together. So, the M1 Max was already really powerful. And now what they've done is link these two chips together. There are no issues with latency or anything else between the bridge that connects these two chips. And of course, what you've got here is a really, really powerful device. Now, all of this is really exciting. I think the stuff that Apple have done in the last year and a half with these M1 chips and of course the rumored M2 that might be announced later this year is just absolutely stunning. The amount of power that they're able to provide in such a power efficient package is really putting Intel to shame, of course. Now, Intel did announce a couple of weeks ago some mobile chips that they say rival the M1, but Apple, are so far ahead at this stage, it's going to really take Intel a lot of time to catch up, if they can ever catch up with their x86 platform. Now, all this stuff is exciting. As a Windows user, well, it's a little bit disappointing, of course, where Windows on ARM is at this stage. We had that announcement of the Lenovo ThinkPad, I think it was the 13S last week, that's going to run on a new Qualcomm chip. But, really, Apple has just left Microsoft and Qualcomm in the dust with all of this stuff. Now, I've never used a device with one of these M1 chips, but if you have, please let me know what you think of them in the comments below. I've heard rumors that they work really well with Apple's own optimized software, things like Final Cut Pro. But as soon as you go and start using, third-party software like something from the Adobe Creative Suite, then the performance is just kind of so-so. So that could, of course, be just an issue, that Adobe need to keep working on optimizing that software for the ARM platform. I don't know whether any of that's true, but I'd love to know what you think about it if you've bought an Apple device based on the M1 chip. And in a little bit of late news, and this is going to come as a shock, I'm sure, to many veteran Windows users, that Microsoft could be planning to put the Windows, I think it was called the Windows Sets feature, back into the Windows Insider program. So it's been discovered, although it's not been officially announced by Microsoft, that tabs are coming back potentially to File Explorer and maybe to other applications as well. Now, this is something that you have to it's like a secret switch that you have to flip in the current Insider build. But as you can see here, we've got an article here from Farot about this feature. And am I really excited about this? Well, I don't know. People complain a lot about the lack of tabs in File Explorer, but I think maybe in other applications that they could be really, really useful. But we'll see whether Microsoft does eventually bring this into Insider builds. So if you'd like to see more weekly roundups like this, then please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to like the video so that more people get to see it. But that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.